Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining the Pickens County Republican Party this evening. And as always, we'll start with a prayer. Former Chairman Walt Owens, who is a professor of political science at Clemson University, will lead us in a prayer.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for the liberty that we enjoy in this country, for the freedom to come together and to elect people of our own choice to lead us. We thank you for our great president. We thank you for our Governor Henry McMaster and for our other elected officials. We ask, dear Lord, that you would be with them as they go about making the difficult decisions of democratic government. We ask that you would be with all of us as we go out and try to make this campaign a success. We ask this prayer in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, sir. And if you'd all join me in standing, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And thank you. We are honored this evening to have the Governor of South Carolina join us, and we do appreciate you coming, Governor. I looked you up on the internet a while ago, and I knew most of this, but you have a quite impressive resume. Served in the United States Army during the Vietnam era, 69 to 75. The United States Attorney, Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General of South Carolina. He's Mr. Henry McMaster, Governor McMaster, has spent his adult life in service to the state, and we appreciate it. And Governor McMaster, folks came to hear what you have to say, sir, so I'm not going to belabor the point. I'll turn the floor over to you, sir.
How about now? I like that better. Okay. Can y'all hear me all right? I hear the music up there. Y'all hear me okay? Thank you, Rick. And Walt Owens, I have been a long time. Everybody's been coming to Republican meetings more than 30 years. Please raise your hand. Okay. Well, then y'all remember when it was when we were a distinct minority. I remember when I became party chairman in 1993, we had no majority anywhere. And we were able to, remember in 94, we really had a great strong push, and we were able to secure a majority in the House of Representatives. And then we went on and got a majority in the Senate in 2000. And then we were able to also get a majority in the statewide offices. There you go. Goes up, but okay. And that's okay. I'll do it this way. But we got the majority now. We got all 9 of the statewide offices, majorities in the House, majorities in the Senate, and that's real progress. And what really tops that progress off now is we got the greatest president that we've had in so many years, one of the greatest presidents we'll ever have, and that's Donald Trump. And I'm delighted that he's endorsed me in this race. He came to Greenville. We had a big event over there and raised some money, and he made a lot of friends. And I'm hoping he can come back to South Carolina again before long. He came to Boeing last year. He is a great man. But I got to tell you this story. As I was on the way to the national convention where we nominated him back in Cleveland. And I called Peggy, my wife. I was on the way up, and I called Peggy and said, Peggy, did you ever in your wildest dream see me, your husband Henry, nominating Donald Trump for president? She said, Henry, I hate to tell you, but I never seen you in any of my wildest dreams. But it's not a dream. It really is happening. And what I'm doing for the state, it's exactly the same things that Donald Trump is doing, and it's the things that all conservatives want to do. He is stimulating commerce and growth, and when he announced his tax cut, y'all remember that we had businesses that were expanding, businesses that were hiring people giving them raises, and also even giving them bonuses. Now, I've asked the legislature to do a $2.2 billion tax cut for all South Carolinians. That's 15% tax cut off your state income tax rate. They haven't done it yet, but I think they're going to. And I've also, because we are competing with the other southeastern states, that's where all the action is. It's all in the South. The Rust Belt, there are people leaving up there to come here. Nobody's leaving here to go up there. In fact, when we were in Cleveland, I noticed that a lot of the big, beautiful buildings downtown in Cleveland, beautiful buildings, all the cut stone, and it's just remarkable buildings, but they were empty. Some of the upper floors had people in them. So I asked, where's everybody going? What's happening? They say people are leaving Cleveland. People are leaving Ohio. They're going down to the South. It's sunny, and particularly South Carolina. You have the mountains, and you have the oceans, and you have plenty of water, and the friendliest people in the whole world. And I asked about the population. They said the population of Cleveland back in about 1958, 59, 60 was close to 900,000. When I was up there for that convention, it was about 450 or 400,000 people just leaving. But they're coming here, and we're growing. But we got to cut those income taxes. Just like President Trump has ordered a decrease in cutting of regulations. I issued one of my first executive orders was get rid of all these regulations in the agencies that I control. Get rid of those regulations. And we've knocked out a lot of them. We got a lot more that have to go. But also I've asked the legislature pass a law cutting the income tax to zero. For what? For retirement pay, for retired military, for retired law enforcement officers, for peace officers, and retired first responders. Why is that? Because we can't pay them enough. Can't pay them enough, but that'll help with recruitment, it'll help with retention, and it'll also help keep us strong. I know from my experience as U.S. Attorney for 4 years and Attorney General for 8, and of all the candidates, we got good candidates, but I'm the only one with a background in law enforcement and prosecution, and I know what I'm talking about in this area and others. But when you don't have strong law enforcement, then you have nothing. You would live in fear. You worry about things. You worry about your children. And I'm tired of our people worrying about our children going to school. What I've asked the legislature to do, and they're getting ready to do it, take a small step, not as big as I asked for in January, but to take a small step to provide money to help the counties hire a full-time, trained, certified police officer in every school, in every county, in every district in South Carolina. I asked for $5 million. They're debating on whether it's going to be 2 or 3 or how much, but it's going to be something. And we'll see how it works. And I know that's the quickest, most efficient way to do this, and it'll work. And then we'll take the next step soon after that, as well as cutting tax. Another thing I've asked them to do is this. We do not want to ever have, or let anybody believe, we don't want to have any sanctuary cities in South Carolina, ever, 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 ever. And that's another thing. President Trump and I agree 100% on that. In fact, there's not much that we disagree on. We're headed, we understand, you understand, that when business is thriving, when people are safe, when people are happy, everything gets better. I've seen it as U.S. Attorney and Attorney General. When you have people working, when you have families that have jobs to go to, everything gets better. Drug usage goes down, crime goes down, opioid use, which is all over the place now, will go down if we have that. Divorces go down, marriages go up, everything gets better. When I was Attorney General, I created a program for domestic violence prosecutions. Didn't have any money, So I asked the private lawyer, said, if you will come and let me deputize you and train you to be a certified domestic violence prosecutor, we'll send you into the courts and you can prosecute those cases. Prior to then, these women typically have been beaten by their loved one, they would call them. Y'all don't know this, I bet, but the typical statistics for such domestic violence things are that a woman will be beaten 10 times before she'll call the law. And then of those that call the law, half of them will refuse to be a witness at court. So the case almost is dropped. And then of those who do go to court, half of them will testify for the man that beat them, because they don't want him to go to jail. They just want him to quit beating. It is a horrible thing anyway. So we got private lawyers, certified them, trained them. They went in there and stood by those women and prosecuted those cases, and the conviction rate for domestic violence went from 30% to over 70%. Didn't cost a penny. Those are the kind of things we can do. Sanctuary cities, my proposal is any city that does not certify on a yearly basis to SLED that they are obeying the federal law and the state law, and they are calling ICE when they have an illegal alien, will lose all of their state funding. And it is perjury to file a false affidavit to that effect. We don't want to have sanctuary cities, because if we are seen as allowing one kind of law breaking to go on, what's that do? That starts the ball rolling, and before you know it, you're headed downhill. We don't want to go downhill. We want to keep on going up. I met a man, a Congressman, Steve King from Iowa, not long ago, and he, on your head, you know him. He's a conservative leader and thinker. He said 10 years ago, he told them in Iowa, we need to have a sanctuary city law. We don't want to start having those things here. And everybody said, well, Steve, we don't have any sanctuary cities. Why do we need to have a sanctuary city law banning that? That's the same thing we're hearing now to this proposal. He says, well, we don't want to have any. We want the world to know right now, and the criminals to know that they can't come here and hide, that we will not allow it. I said, well, what happened? He said, well, they didn't pass it, and so now, Walt, they got 10 to 12 sanctuary cities in Iowa. And now those illegals have worked their way into the system. They're doing jobs here and there. They have some political clout, and it's very difficult to get rid of them. And what's happening? Those 10 or 12 cities are having more and more problems going down, down, down. So there are a lot of things that we can do, and I'll answer your questions. But let me just finish with this point. I think this is the greatest place in the whole world to be. And often you have to listen to other people tell you that before you realize that we're really living in paradise. And I've had the opportunity a little bit as Attorney General, but a good bit as Lieutenant Governor, and now going on 2 years as Governor. I can tell you from talking to people all over the world, from Japan, from Korea, all over Europe, they come here and I ask them, why is it that you like us so much? Is it because of the technical college system, which is the greatest in the whole world? And we're now expanding that to have relationships with the four-year colleges, the research universities, the high schools, where you can get a high school diploma and a two-year associate degree at the same day from a technical college and a high school. Is it because of that? Is it because of the great port that we're working to get money? We got it in last year's federal budget. We're working to get it in this year's federal budget to be sure that port goes deeper. Is it because of that 52-foot deep port? It'll be the deepest on the Atlantic coast. Is that it? They say, well, that's part of the reason. Is it the right to work law? I say, well, that's part of the reason. Well, what is it then? The great research universities? I'm trying to develop a standard operating procedure where these new companies know that our research universities and the technical colleges are willing to enter into collaborative agreements with them for off-the-scale innovative research and development. You combine the power of a Clemson, a USC, or a medical University of South Carolina, you combine that power, that research, and that intellectual power with these companies who got all the assets in the world to go into these new areas. And it's like nitro and glycerin. It just kaboom. It's great. And that's what they're doing right now. But is that the reason? They say, no, the reason we come here is because of the people. The people of South Carolina are different from any people in the world. I say, how is that? They say, well, in South Carolina, the only place in the United States, when someone gives you their word, looks you in your hand and shakes your hand, looks you in the eye, You can take it to the bank. They say South Carolina is a handshake state. You do deals, you give your word on a handshake. They say that doesn't happen anywhere else. Now, I didn't know that, but that's what they're telling me, and that's why they're coming. So what's all this mean for us? Just since I've been in office, I'll finish with this and answer your questions. Just since I've been in office, since January, I've had the pleasure of announcing over $6 billion of new investment and over 20,000 new jobs. We've had other governors that have done great things. We've been going up, up, up. Governor Campbell really gave us a boost when he brought BMW here. Governor Haley worked on this tirelessly. You remember the unemployment rate was real high and all that. Well, it's going down, down, down. But what we've done just in the last, since January, has broken all records. We got more people working now than we've ever had working before. And I'll tell you, we're going to keep going up. As long as we keep the taxes down, which I'm going to do, just like President Trump, get rid of the regulations that are strangling small and sometimes large businesses, have the people safe, that means law and order and law enforcement, and work like a dog every day to be sure we don't have sanctuary cities, we don't have any of these other if we can do those things and keep the taxes low, then we can continue to grow, 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 and that's what I'm determined to do. And I would like to have your support in doing that. Because as President Trump has said the other day, when you're winning like this, with all this growth, all these jobs, when you're winning like this, you don't fire the coach and hire a rookie. No, you give the coach 4 more years on his contract. So that's what we're going to do. And I thank you very much for inviting me, and I'll be glad to try to answer your question.
Yes, sir. Get that back out of the way. Start off with a couple of questions of my own, if you don't mind. This is from a friend of mine. Went and got totally not a campaign issue right now at all, but went and got the address changed on her driver's license the other day. And when they gave it back to her, it had big letters at the top of it. It said not for federal identification. That's something new I hadn't seen. Can you tell me what that's about? Do you know?
That may have been a choice that was made on the federal ID program. I wish I could remember the details of it right now, but you do not have to get that federal ID card. There's certain things you have to provide to get it that will allow you to get on airplanes and go into buildings, federal buildings and reservations, but if you don't provide all that, you can still get your driver's license.
Thank you, sir. I promised I'd ask you about that, sir.
I think I'm right on that.
Secondly, you did serve on the Ports Authority under Nick.
That's right.
Do you have, what's your position on exploring for oil and natural gas off the coast?
I'm against it.
Can you tell us why?
I'll be happy to, because that's a question I get asked. I don't get it asked much anymore down on the coast, but the farther away from the coast you get, the more. Here's why I do not want to have the testing or the drilling off the South Carolina coast. Now, it may be all right for another state, but we are not a good candidate for that. And this is why, number one, even the best, we know always the most modern, the best machinery and technology can go wrong, as it did down in the Gulf, and they're still suffering from that. Well, now they have in the Gulf, they have industrialized coasts. We do not have an industrialized coast. Our coast is stemmed all the way from North Carolina to Georgia. We have marshes, we have great fisheries, little creeks and inlets and all of that. But we have recreational places, we have homes, we have people living there, a great tourism industry. We have a very soft, beautiful coast that all of the explorers back in the 1600s, when they saw it, they were all writing back to their sovereigns that there's no place on this in the New World like what we today call Carolina. It's all still there. We haven't messed it up. So I don't want to mess it up. If we were to have an oil spill off our coast, that would cripple one of the 4 great economic engines that we have in South Carolina. It's that tourism, and there's tourism all over the state, but there's more tourism per capita on the coast than any place else. It would cripple that. You also have agriculture, you have manufacturing, and you have the port. So we don't want to take a chance of destroying what nature has given us and what so many people make their livings on that beautiful coast. But now, well, how about the other states? Well, other states might have some room for something on their coast. We do not have any place where we could put the kind of infrastructure that it takes to support the offshore drilling. The pipes come in, they lay them down on the ocean floor, they come in and they go into these big tanks and they either refine it or get it prepared for refining. Trucks coming in and out. We have no place on our coast to accommodate that kind of thing. Some people joke maybe you could put it on the ocean course, the famous, internationally famous ocean course down at Kiowa Island, but probably not. They probably don't want to have it there. But another reason is we have hurricanes on our coast. I've been just this morning to Myrtle Beach and then Charleston and then Beaufort for what? Because the Emergency Management Division and all the other agencies are working together to prepare for hurricane season, which starts tomorrow. Well, we might have a hurricane any time. Other states don't have hurricanes like we do. We have them all the time. And can you imagine an oil spill combined with a hurricane? You'd have oil out there on that street right there. You remember when Hugo came through and hit Charleston? Went all the way through Columbia. I was asleep. I remember when it hit our house, blowing shingles off it. It knocked down old oak trees in Charlotte. Now, can you imagine if we had had a oil spill the same time? Every mayor, every county council, every municipality of all kinds on the coast has voted, passed resolutions in South Carolina against offshore testing and drilling. And finally, about 3 weeks ago, I read an article. Come on in, ma'am. Okay. There was a discovery or revelation, people had forgotten about it, but a bunch of ordnance had been dumped after World War II off our coast, out in the ocean. There are bombs out there. There are all those kind of reasons that other states don't have that we do why we don't want it. And the money that would come from it is according to the statistics, are minuscule in comparison to the money that we have from our great tourism industry and all the other industry that depends on the marshes and the ocean. That's why.
I have to say that's the best answer I've heard against.
Well, I tell you, it took me a while to get it together, but I met with Secretary Zinke. He came to Columbia to talk about it, and I told him the way we felt. And he said it's going to take some while before they make their final decisions, but I'm just not going to let that happen. If you go down to that coast and you look at that coast, you don't want. I flew over the coast, as I mentioned earlier today. Ladies and gentlemen, you fly over that low country and look at the marshes and the inlets, and it is the little creeks and things. They may go 3 miles to go from here to that truck over there, and the twists and turns. It's a beautiful place, and the Ace Basin is one of the, I think there are 50 on some lists of spectacular nature places in the world, and we got 2 of them in South Carolina. One of them's the Ace Basin. I've forgotten what the other. We just don't want to mess that up.
Yes, sir. We'll open this up to the floor now for questions.
Yes, sir.
If you would, just introduce yourself to the governor.
Hi, I'm Debbie Spa. I have a question about the gas tax hike. Last year, the bill came to your desk on May 9th. Senator Davis and others asked you to please wait on vetoing the bill. They were getting more and more people to say, legislators to say that they thought maybe they could get your veto sustained. So they wanted you to wait on that, but you went ahead and vetoed it right away the same day. So I think you've said that you are against tax increases. This is the biggest one we've ever had in South Carolina. So why didn't you at least give them those 2 weeks to try to get enough legislators to sustain your veto?
Because they'd had several years to get enough legislators to sustain that veto. And that's a good question. I'm glad you asked. And I told everybody when the first time the issue came up when I was in office is I'm going to veto that. If it gets to me, I'm going to veto it. And so there's no point in wasting. Everyone knew where I stood, and everyone knew that, I mean, they've been working on this thing for however many years it was that the gas tax has been a subject of consideration. I told them what I was going to do, and I did exactly what I told them I was going to do. they had ample opportunity, if they could have gotten the votes together, to do it long before that day. But I'll tell you why I vetoed it. In doing research, I learned, to my surprise, that of the $623 million that were raised in 2016 on the gas tax, I think I have the number right, 12.75 cents per gallon. It's an excise tax. It stays the same no matter how much a gallon of gas costs. It's not like a percentage. 12.75 cents produced in 2016, I'm pretty sure $623 million. Somewhere between 50% and maybe 35%, somewhere in there, depending on how you read the numbers, did not go to roads or did not go to priority roads. I say it again, a huge hunk of the money did not go to has not been going to roads at all for many years. And that which has gone to roads, much of it has gone to the wrong roads that you read about in the newspaper. So the answer was not raising taxes. The answer is spending the money wisely on the right roads and not raising those taxes. We don't have a tax. We're taxing the people plenty. What we have is a spending problem. But now here's the good news. The law provided that for the first time ever, the governor now, I'm the first one to have this power, has the unfettered power to remove highway commissioners whom I think are not doing the job. Now, we've got 9 now. I've appointed, just since this all happened, I've appointed 6. And they are dollar hawks, and they are honest, and they ask a lot of questions. So we got 6 whistleblowers who are honest, hard-working people. I know them all, and they are now a majority of the highway. I'm not accusing anybody of doing anything wrong. I'm not going to do that until I catch somebody doing something wrong. But I've talked to all those commissioners, as well as Christy Hall, who does a superb job as superintendent of Secretary of Transportation, and made it clear that from now on, there's be no question that the Department of Transportation is going to spend money on the highways that have been selected by the engineers and the study and the traffic control and all that, in conjunction with the communities and the COGS and the county transportation commissions and all that. It's going to go to the right roads, and if that does not happen, then somebody is going to be removed and we put somebody else in there. So I think we're going to make some progress. And I've also asked the Inspector General to go look at these, start with several, to look at the county transportation commissions and see where they're spending their money, because 25% of that tax goes to the counties, where there's, it seems to me, is little to no checking on exactly what's happening. There's transparency. I believe in full disclosure. I believe if you just tell people what's happening, where the money's going, then people can make their own decisions and things have a way of working themselves out. Next. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Governor.
Evening.
Excuse me, Presley Stutz. We know we're one of the highest tax states in the Southeast. And I want to know what your plans are for the next 4 years if you're elected governor to help lower those taxes on the hardworking citizens of South Carolina. It seems that a lot of the big businesses, and I understand to lure them, we've got to give them tax breaks. And I would like you to consider for some of our senior citizens here. They've worked 50 years or better working in South Carolina, and they may have the mortgages paid for, but they still don't own their house because they still have to pay taxes. You had a great initiative. I'm a retired Navy chaplain, a veteran. I appreciate that initiative for the retired military, but would you even consider an initiative to say seniors over the age of 70 or 75 no longer have to pay taxes on their primary residence?
Yes, that one way to do that is through the homestead exemption. As you're aware, you get to, I've forgotten what it is now, maybe it's $65,000. Oh, that's not enough. The way I approach it is that people have been paying money all their lives, and at some point they have paid enough. So what I would like to do, and I've asked a man named Arthur Laffer, whom some of you may know. He's the He's the supply side guru that taught. That's right. Well, he's been to the mansion. He's given a lecture there. It's fascinating, by the way. It's great to hear from that. But he has offered to come back and do a comprehensive tax study in South Carolina. I hope we can get him to do that, and we can, instead of doing piecemeal here and there, we can have a comprehensive study to bring the taxes, to bring them down, and do just the kind of thing that you're suggesting. That's good. Have you read the one, I think his most recent one, I don't know the name of it, is full of statistics, where Arthur Laffer studied all the states in the country to determine which ones are doing the best and why. And he compared, he isolated it down to, I think it's about 10 or 11 states that have high taxes or are raising their taxes, and 10 or 11 that have low taxes. There are 8 states, I think it's 8, don't have any state income tax at all. But anyway, they're lowering their taxes or they are all very low. In every instance, by the measures that he uses to gauge prosperity, that those that have high taxes or are raising them are going down, they're sinking. And Ohio was one of them. And those that have low taxes or are lowering their taxes are going up. So they don't believe it, they won't buy it, and I don't understand why not. But that book sure proves it. And here's another evidence. North Carolina cut their income taxes, I think, last year, maybe the year before, and Florida did it 2 weeks ago. And I talked to friends in both places, and they say, we're trying to stay ahead of y'all. So I've called for that tax cut I told you about, and I want to get that done and get more done. Yes, ma'am.
Governor, I had a question for you, and you mentioned just a second ago about the desire for women and domestic violence and having creating a culture of respect for women in our state. But you made a comment that was reported in the state, and it said that you told women at an event at your house at the governor's mansion that you would give them money if they jumped into a pool with their clothes on. And if you said that, how is that not disrespecting women and continuing to create a culture of disrespect?
I'm so glad you asked that question. I did not say that.
But a member of your staff was quoted at the time. He was a spokesperson for you. His name was Brian Sims, and he was quoted as saying, not only did you say it, but that the joke was just taken out of context. But how is that out of context?
No, I did not say that.
So
I did not say that. Let me tell you what happened. No,
you
I
didn't
did
say you
not
would give $100.
I said I would give $100 to. Here's what happened. We had the sheriffs there, all the sheriffs,
And their wives.
and wives, and a few other people, and we were inviting people to go around the mansion and look at the mansion. The beautiful grounds is 9 acres. We got Audubon Society people working on it right now, and I said, take a look, go anywhere you want. Anybody that'll jump in the pool, it's right there. I'll give you $100. That's what I said. Someone else, one of the sheriffs, said, and if it's a female, I'll give you $200. That's the truth.
Did you correct that man for saying that in your house, to disrespecting women?
Everybody was heading for the doors to go outside at that time. Mm-hmm. But I did not say that. And whoever is saying I said that is not telling you the truth. Yes.
Just a second. If it's on video, and unless you have the microphone, nobody will be able to hear your.
We appreciate you so much coming to Anderson to our stump meeting on Monday night. We just really appreciate that.
I was happy to be there.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to ask a question, but about the Department of Transportation, I just have to ask this question. We had a really bad intersection where Kings Road in Anderson dead ends at Brown Road, and there were cars lined up forever waiting to get through those stop signs. It was 3 different roads that came together. And then after that, they put in the East-West Parkway, which you may be familiar with. It cost $25 million, I believe. And that alleviated that problem. A lot of people think, and that was a good way to go from Clemson Boulevard to Highway 81 and go straight through it. And the parkway's been wonderful. And that alleviated this intersection of where Kings Road dead end at Brown Road. And I know one of our treasurer of our club in Anderson said she can see the intersection from her home, but other people say that it alleviated the problem. But they are still going ahead with putting a roundabout there. And I don't know what kind of cost, obviously some million. And people say, well, it's federal dollars or something, and if you don't spend them, you will lose them. But that's not common sense, and that's wasting taxpayers' money. You may not, you probably don't know the particulars, but I think that's something that should be checked into, because regardless of that thing about federal dollars and you could lose them, it's all taxpayer money.
Well, I don't know, is it the Highway Department, Department of Transportation doing that, or is that your local,
I don't
your county?
know. I don't know, but Brian White would be thoroughly familiar with that, and he's done a great job.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's those type of things that concern people when our taxes are getting higher and higher and higher, and that just seems like a total waste.
Well, I know nothing about those facts, but
Yeah.
I know a lot of. I think if people knew how much they were paying in taxes, and the federal taxes particularly, there'd be a lot more concern than there is today.
Yeah.
A lot of folks, of course, get a W-2 form, and they have a take-home pay, and they.
Yeah, but
really-
you can fire anybody or people on the board, can't you? Right now, you have that authority.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
On the state commission.
Yeah,
yes.
the state.
Not
well,
on the
that's
county.
something I want to mention, and
I appreciate you
it'd be good
mentioning
to
that.
check into it, I think.
He took a note, and we're going to do that. Thank you.
Okay.
Candidate for South Carolina House, District 5, Alan Quinn.
I was going to tell him that. Welcome.
Thank you.
You answered one of my questions, which was about the offshore drilling, and I completely agree with that. I've got another question, and it's my platform. In Pickens County, and you were talking about it earlier, about the research universities, the schools, we have all that. We're home to Clemson University. We're home to Tri-County Tech. We're home to one of the best career high school schools in the state. And the reason I'm running, and it's on my platform, is Pickens County is 46 out of 46 counties in economic development. But yet, we're surrounded by Greenville, Spartanburg, Anderson, Oconee counties, which are doing real well. And I have a plan I think will work, but I'm interested in knowing what you think. How can we get things better in Pickens County?
Well, that's a good question. There are a lot of areas in the state that where one big investment would make an enormous difference. I was talking to the superintendent of education in Lee County, and they have no such big industries there, no big manufacturing plants. They do have a prison there, and they do have a big waste dump there, and they have the education system, but it's a beautiful place. But I asked her what would be the impact of a company coming in and building a plant of some kind and having 300 or maybe 500 brand new jobs, good paying jobs. She said that would change everything in the county, just one thing like that. So and that's what Governor Campbell saw in either 92 or 90, I guess it was 1992, with BMW. He saw that would be a game changer. The Department of Commerce, we have a great Department of Commerce, which of course answers to the governor. They do a superior job. They can't make anybody go anywhere. What they can do is market it, and that is always done in close coordination with the county organization and the development people in the area. And also now, one of my emphases is on negotiation conversations with the research universities to see how they can join with you. They don't do that in other states. I mean, but our universities, those research universities, are willing to enter into those kind of agreements. When Samsung came here, they entered immediately into research and development agreements with Clemson and USC. And that takes the power I mentioned earlier, that enormous research, development, and innovational power, and combines it. And it produces great results and innovation and jobs everywhere it's done. So I would say the thing to do is we need to understand that we cannot make these companies pick a county or a city. They do that on their own, and they hire site selection people, and they look all over the country to decide where would be the best place. But I would think that with vigorous marketing, primarily by the local officials, maybe you, sir.
I completely agree with you. That's part of my plan.
Okay, that's a good plan, because this is what I know. When people have jobs, when people look forward to getting up and going to work in the morning and they're making good money, everything changes. Things get better across the board. And so that is really the core of our future, is to combine the power of these technical colleges and the research universities, the four-year schools, and it's being done in a lot of areas right now. If we do that, there's not another state that can keep up with us based on the strength of our people.
Yes, sir. Okay.
One more. Governor, as a grandmother of a state highway patrolman and friends with first responders, I want to say thank you for what you're trying to do. Until you have a grandson that leaves out to go protect, and you know what they go through every time they go out. Nobody knows what it is you stay in prayer. And you do it for the first responders, you do it for him, I do it for all of them. And anything and everything you can do for them as far as tax breaks, you got my vote.
What I know is that if you don't have law and order, if you don't have the rule of law, if you don't have respect for the law, then we can lose everything. But to your point, these law enforcement men and women get up in the morning. I put on a tie most days. They put on a bulletproof vest every day. That's why when George H.W. Bush went out to a ball game one time, and he was throwing out the first pitch, and he threw it about 10 feet, and it hit. He had on a bulletproof vest that day, but to walk out on the pitcher's mound. Well, these law enforcement officers wear those things every day. You know what else they do? When they pull up in the middle of the night, a dark night, and if some car are driving erratically, or they've gotten a bolo, they call it, be on the lookout for this vehicle. When they pull up and pull over, they radio to back up into the headquarters that what they're doing, but also what they do when they walk up is they touch that tail light and leave that fingerprint right there, just in case when they go up, if they get taken down, there'll be that fingerprint on that tail light, so the police can connect that car with that location and that officer line on the ground. Now you got to have respect for somebody who does that, and I do. Next question. Yes, sir. Walt?
Governor, in 1980, a managerial revolution began to sweep this country. General Electric was one of the first, as was Ford Motor Company, Union Pacific Railroad. In the revolution, with this revolution, they took tremendous savings from their management of the operation. 10 years later, when I was on Governor Campbell's staff, I traveled the state calling on industry, and I found that they were very much involved in the same thing. They had undergone these changes and cut their administrative costs tremendously. That revolution has never come to government, with a few exceptions. And I wonder if you had given any thought of the possibility that we could save money that way in our management of the government.
Yes, I have, and we've begun an analysis some months ago to determine where we may be overstaffed, understaffed, which is, we're understaffed in law enforcement for sure. But you're correct, and that is something that we're doing in my office to try to get a better grip from a different perspective on some things that we can reduce. But as Grover Norquist and others that have been in the tax business for so many years would tell you, the best way to cut the government is not to try to find this employee or that one that's not putting in 100%, but you just have to keep the money away from the government. If you just take the money away, then if they're doing their job, the things that need to be done the priorities will be done, and we can cut out some of these other things because they simply don't have money to spend on. I see some of the money to spend on some of these things and just shake my head. And I get a chance to veto some of them. Some of them are so tied up you can't veto them without vetoing something that's got to be done. But so that is a concern, very much. Yes, sir.
Yes, Governor. I'm Don Warmoth. I'm a retired Air Force officer, and I'm kind of worried about the country that I served for so long. Every day I get up and I thank God that what's-her-name wasn't elected.
Yes.
But anyway, I actually had dealings with them when they were in the White House, but we won't get into that. My question is, how do we stop these people from ruining our history? Watching them tear down monuments and statues and everything else. Not as much, I guess, in this state as like Louisiana and stuff like that. How do we stop that?
Well, I think in our state, of course, we have the Heritage Act that was passed some years ago, and I think that it serves a very useful purpose. I think it's a good law, and I support it. I think the answer to a lot of our problems lie in the fact that people do not understand the history of things or why some monuments are there. I mean, learning history is very difficult to do if you have folks that are not teaching it anymore. In fact, it's hard to find a whole lot of history classes even in the universities these days. We're looking into that as well. There's a state law that requires our colleges to teach a certain number of history courses, and some of them may be reaching that level, but I'm afraid that others are not. But a good, thorough study of history enhances understanding very much. But I don't believe in tearing things down. I believe in building things up. Mm-hmm.
I believe this is going to be our last question back here in the corner.
Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Steve Anders. It's good to be here to support you.
Thank you. Where'd you get that New York accent from? Did y'all notice that?
Who? But I know your stance on illegal immigrants. What is your stance on if one had, left the state back to Mexico that was wanted for questioning? What is your stance on going, having that taken care of, bring them back to South Carolina? Because we tried to, we wrote letters to other people. Nikki Haley was one of them, and it just nothing was ever done.
If when I was in the U.S. Attorney's Office, we did some of that. In fact, we started something called Operation Jackpot, and we had to extradite some international drug traffickers from Sydney, Australia. We worked with Interpol. We had to go through court hearings. I went to Sydney. They had the three-judge panel. It was just like in the movies. They had on the white wigs and the robes, and people were carrying the books in the velvet bags and all of that. But we had to explain to them how the continuing criminal enterprise law fit in with their laws. Some countries we do not have extradition treaties with. That is, we send the proper paperwork and they ignore it because we don't have a treaty with them that says they will honor it. But the central question is the law that we are seeking to bring them back to face the consequences of one that they recognize, one that's recognized in that other country. And that's usually the holdup. Now, I don't know what Mexico does. I'm not sure what kind of treaties that we have with them. But that would be a question that could be handled according to the law. There's no reason why if we have an extradition treaty and these crimes fit into the framework of that treaty, there's no reason why they can't be extradited back to face the charges.
Could I throw this in on the end since you brought up the immigration issue again? Anything you'd like to share with us on your thoughts about the DACA program or where we should be headed?
I agree with with President Trump. I think the solution, the approach that he offered is a good one. But I'm a law and order man, and I believe you follow the law. And if you don't like it, you change the law.
Amen. I'd like to thank you again for coming, and any closing remarks that you'd like to. If you want to do your closing remarks, the floor is still yours.
I'm happy to be here, and I'll say again, we're winning, so don't fire the coach and put in a rookie. Let's keep the winning coach.
I have to say, having run for office unsuccessfully a couple of times myself, it takes a little bit of nerve to stand up in front of people and just take whatever question pops up, and you don't know what's going to happen. And facing voters is, to me, a good bit different from reporters and that kind of people. These are the people that actually you're asking for their vote. I think their questions mean more. They do to me. But I want to thank Silver Bay, George, and the folks here at the Silver Bay for hosting this tonight. We really appreciate them having us here. And I appreciate all you folks coming out tonight. It means a lot to us for you to show up, and it means we're actually doing something that makes a difference. That was my goal when I took this position, to try to be relevant. And the video will be up on our website later, PickensSCGOP.com. You can share it with your friends. We'll put it up all over Facebook so people across the state can see the governor answering your questions. The last one we did on a town forum like this with the local candidates running for District 4 and District 5 has been viewed over 400 times now, so it does make a difference. But again, thank you all for coming out. And if you haven't, one last thing, if you haven't signed our sheet, and if you're not on our email list, please sign the sheet. And every time we do one of these, you'll find out about it. And go to our website. There's forums with all the Attorney General candidates on there, Jeff Duncan, several of the other candidates for governor. So be safe going home. God bless.